Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Saturday morning show. Welcome, Kerin. How are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Are you a first-time landlord is the question. And if you are, we are going to run through a lot of helpful tips and advice on how to really start out and how to thrive at buy-to-let as well. There's a lot of changes going on. The market's changing, the legislation's changing, and people are selling up. But let's look at the opportunities and how you could still really thrive in buy-to-let. And I think a lot of people maybe do think about becoming a landlord, but they're wondering how to go about it. And given all these recent changes in the law and obviously how we operate as landlords and agents, investors and things, it can be quite difficult to navigate. So we're going to delve into it today. And the buy-to-let landscape, I mean, it's certainly shifting. There's no doubt about that. And as traditional landlords with that, that short-term business model, just like that outlook and that short-term business model in place, they are exiting because it's really not a short-term thing now. You have to be in it for the long haul, I think, and really dedicated to what you're doing. And then also that dwindling supply of homes, and it's really driving up rents and it is creating new opportunities for people. So I think we really need to look at how to do that. Now, there aren't any really quick wins. There's no really quick wins in buy-to-let. There is a need for people to build that long-lasting wealth and future financial freedom by, really establishing that robust and responsible business that provides good quality rental homes for tenants as well. Happy tenants, happy landlords. We say it all the time. So run us through, Kerin, some things that we're going to cover this morning and hopefully give people some good tips and advice on how to build that thriving buy-to-let business.
Yeah, so we've got some good tips here. So if you are new to landlording, understanding the basics is key to building a successful portfolio, and this guide is packed with tips to build a strong business from the ground up. So we're going to have a wee look at today getting your finances right. So obviously it's very important, making sure you're right there with your money, finding the perfect investment, understanding your legal obligations, attracting and managing tenants, and optimizing your investments and avoiding pitfalls. So we've got a few good topics in there. Entering the world of buy-to-let can feel like a big step, but it's also an exciting one that offers real potential for financial growth, security, and a lot of personal fulfillment. So let's have a wee look. So I think, Richard, you can start us off with getting your finances right.
Yeah, I think that is a really important one. Let's get the numbers right to start with. But I like it, and how you said there, Kerin, it is an exciting thing, and it is really exciting. People maybe get too excited at the off and forget at the get-go that there are things that they need to do, and be quite methodical and speak to the right people, and your numbers and your finances are right up there, because if they're not right, everything else is going to come crashing down. So yeah, let's talk about that, because if you get all these things right, then that's when it does become really enjoyable, exciting, and starts to thrive. I mean, starting your buy-to-let journey begins, with getting the money right. Like you say, Kerin, get that money right. This means more than just obviously saving. It's all about understanding the costs that are involved. That's from buying the property to running it day to day as a buy-to-let. Now, let's talk about mortgages and lending. Now, I'm not a mortgage advisor or anything, but obviously the basics are most buy-to-let mortgages, we'll just say the majority, 99.9% of buy-to-let mortgages are 25% deposit. I don't actually think there's any products that don't have that on the buy-to-let with the 25% deposit down. So 25% off the property's value you need to have to put down as a security deposit, which is in vast contrast to your residential purchases, which are typically about 10%. And lenders generally want to see what the monthly rental income will be, and that has to be at least 125% of the monthly loan repayments. So you need to obviously then speak to a letting agent or somebody who's qualified to give you the market value for the property, a realistic market value, because your lender will want to match that up with what your loan repayments will be each month. And as I say, that has to be at least 125% of that in order for you to qualify for the buy-to-let product. So that's the basics of a buy-to-let mortgage. Lenders will usually charge product fees, anything between like 0.5% up to 1.5% of the loan amount as your product fee. So you need to take that into consideration, and you could either pay that up front or through your monthly installments if you wish. I mean, ideally, you'd probably just pay it up front, but I mean, it's entirely up to you. But yeah, you could have that in installments and that'll be set at the mortgage interest rate as well. Now, also, there's normally a charge to have a property valued and assessed as a suitable security. And if you use a broker to find the best deal, which is a good deal usually with a broker, they may also charge you a fee as well. So you've got all these things to think about. Now, people might think, oh, the numbers, I'm not good with numbers and things. It's not very complicated. It is quite a methodical process. And if you have the right people, you have a good mortgage broker, mortgage advisor or whatever, or a good agent who can talk you through that process, it is quite easy to understand. Other buying costs, of course, most of you will be aware if you've bought and sold property, as you will have solicitor fees for the legal work. You'll have land and buildings tax transaction, including the second homes tax supplement if you already own a primary residence. And here in Scotland, we are 8% at the moment. So you will also have that cost as well. So you need to take all these into consideration. So build a contingency fund also of possibly, now we spoke about this in the midweek show, actually, I think, just there.
Multiple shows, the importance of it.
We just spoke about it through the week, Kerin, I think Wednesday there when we done the midweek show, and it's building that contingency fund, round about 1 to 2 months rent to cover, repairs, maintenance, insurance, temporary drops in possibly income if you've got a vacant period, and all these unexpected things. We'll cover a wee bit more of that later on, but that's another thing to take into consideration, because all too often we hear landlords who maybe only have, now the majority of landlords in the whole of the country only have 1, possibly 2 properties for let, possibly because they're an accidental landlord, they've inherited the property, they're working away somewhere and they've got the property up, their initial residence up for let, and you hear them saying, oh, well, just as long as they've got enough to cover the mortgage. And that's not the way to look at it, because you will always, at some point through that journey, have a need to change the boiler, fix the roof. Something will come up. Where are you going to find the money for that? Please don't say a credit card. That's not the way to do it. I mean, obviously, in extenuating circumstances and things, people use credit cards and that's fine, and then pay them off. But it's not ideal. So yeah, have that contingency plan. So what I'm trying to say is have a clear financial picture that really ensures that you're ready for anything, and setting that kind of stable cost for your investment and keeping you stress-free, no like unexpected stress levels because you've then got money worries because you've got this obligation to carry out repairs and things as well, or you've not got your numbers right in the beginning when you've been purchasing or planning your buy-to-let purchase, and then it doesn't actually equate to a really profitable investment, and then you're in a tricky situation. So yeah, getting the numbers right and having that money sorted at the beginning is a very wise decision. And if you're not that very, obviously that way in terms of numbers and money orientated, get advice from the people that are, and they should be able to explain it very clearly to you, and then you could think, right, this is where I am, and have a bigger and clearer picture of what you're doing without having to get overwhelmed. So yeah, speaking to the right people, of course. So that's your finances in a nutshell. But I think that really covers the fundamentals of what to get right in the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, one of the key things at the start as well, along with your finances, is finding the perfect investment.
Yes, and that's what I was just saying about when you're looking for that investment and then doing the numbers and things. So give us some tips on finding the right property in the right place and that right investment.
So selecting the right property is crucial for your buy-to-let success, and this means doing your homework in multiple areas to make sure they're profitable and it's going to be a popular choice for you. So knowing your areas that you're buying in, key. But it's wise to start in an area that you already know, but wherever you choose, speak to the local letting agents to identify locations with high demand and for rental homes.
Just going to say that, like, obviously that's good to pick areas and places that you know and are familiar with. But do you know, if you're an investor and not just a landlord, if you're an investor who's buying things in different areas and different local authorities in different countries, even, do you know, we've got people that are overseas and down south, and it's good to have that local agent who can say to you, right, okay, this is a good street, but the next one isn't, or this is a good area, but they're like, and really pinpoint what types of properties and where. And your agent, if they know their area and they've been in the business long enough, will be able to give you that advice.
And considering the type of property that best suits the type of tenancy that you're aiming for as well, whether it's a small flat for young professionals or a larger house for families. So not only is that area key, but the type of property for what you're looking to attract also. But that also ties in with matching your target market to local amenities. So thinking about schools, parks, and quiet streets for children, while professionals tend to go for good transport links as well as places to eat and drink.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because some people don't think about that, and to us that's strange because obviously it's kind of second nature. We think, right, okay, there's a 3-bedroom house here, it's got the school up the road, it's got the supermarket, you know, round the corner, and then, or if we're up somewhere where it's like, this is a nice apartment, it would be a couple, do you know, it's like it's got the train station there, there's cafes and things but close by, so right away you've got one that's suited to a couple or a professional couple, and another one's to a family, and that would be the target audience. I mean, it doesn't always necessarily mean that's the person that moves in, but they're the target audience for that property in that area because of the amenities and the property style.
Yeah, very much so. Researching your rental values to determine potential yields and identifying properties that meet lending requirements for a mortgage as well is going to be key. So obviously, if you know your areas, you need to know your rental values as well. Like we say, rental values can differ very much from towns and villages, more rural areas, but also street to street as well. The joys of the Fife market.
Yeah, it's so important though to get that rent level right, and I think, and realistic, I think as well. Not only, like I was just saying, obviously if you're doing buy-to-let lending, then they will want to see what your rental value is in comparison to your monthly payments in order to approve which product you could get in buy-to-let financing. But over and above that, it's always good to be realistic as well, because we've seen it and quite a lot recently in the last few years, like rental prices have been pushed up, and obviously because of the demand for property and, you know, numerous different things, but some of them are just so unrealistic, and we've actually like stopped some landlords who have been advised or looking at other listings that we don't agree with the rent level for that area, and had to really like come back to down to earth a wee bit with some of them, be like, look, if you're thinking about the long term here, let's look at this. Is this sustainable? Can a tenant on X amount of a salary afford to sustain that amount, taking into consideration there are other expenses and things to run the property? And do you know, or are you going to have a tenant in there and they're away again in 4, 5, 6 months, and then you have to do the whole process again, which is going to cost you? Do you know, you need to weigh that up. And if it's long-term investment that you're ideally, which you should be concentrating on, then the rental value has to be correct.
Yeah, and obviously we talked about this through the weekend. Obviously the market's changing and there are a few expectations that we are having to be aligned with landlords, because it's not going to be viable to maybe put it at the inflated rent that they're thinking of. So it's, like we say, making sure it's on at the right price so you're getting the right tenant in.
Yeah, and I wouldn't like to be that agent that's seen as having
overpricing,
totally overinflated values. Yeah, definitely not.
So coming back, remember that fixer-uppers take time to renovate and leave you without income, and that homes with low energy performance ratings will likely need updating with future legislation. Obviously, we've had multiple talks about them looking to bring in the minimum banding of a C for EPCs. So we'll see when that actually comes into effect. But obviously the can's being kicked down the road a little bit with that one, but eventually it is going to be a factor that comes in. So
that was an understatement there, Kerin.
So if you're looking for new properties to purchase, focus on the energy performance certificate rating as well, and see if that's something that's going to be achievable to get it up to a band C. just for your future proofing there for it, so you're not hit with a big bill when it does eventually come into effect.
Yeah.
And obviously, like we say, thinking about the future is key. So upcoming regeneration plans, highly rated schools, or thriving local high street is great for long-term popularity. Also will help your return and help increase your return over the years as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Putting in this upfront effort makes all the difference to your investing powers, giving you the skills to choose properties that will deliver constant and reliable income and build up equality to finance future purchases.
Yes,
so that's the key
and
there
I
is
think
obviously
if you're
finances.
building that buy-to-let, if you want to build that buy-to-let portfolio, then yes, you need to think about future investment as well, and how you could do that. So yeah, so we've covered the numbers, the finances, how the people to speak to, and how to get that right, the fundamentals of that, finding that perfect investment property, like what you say is like in the right area, with the right target audience, with the right rental level, and where you could add value and possibly remortgage and use the equity to reinvest in things. These are all things you need to think about. But you also need to think about the legal obligations and understanding the legal obligations of having a rental property. Understanding all those ins and outs of the lettings law is really a must for every landlord, every agent. And this just isn't about protecting your property and keeping it's about and keeping the tenants safe. It's also crucial because you need to avoid there are penalties that are associated with not abiding by these rules, and the enforcement of this is starting to get it's a lot less lenient than what it was in previous years, and penalties and fines can be enforced for not following the rules and going by the legislation. Now, up here in Scotland, we have the private residential tenancy now. From I think it was December 2017, we have that. So we have that template with all the mandatory grounds included in that, which is rolled out for every tenancy in Scotland. Now, that makes that legally sound, the tenancy agreement. But if you're south of the border in England, Wales and things, then you really need to have a legally sound tenancy agreement that outlines all the rights, all the responsibilities for you and your tenant, and backed up with a detailed inventory with photographic evidence. This is so important, Kerin, and a lot of people just don't really give it much thought, and it's so important because it states in the PRT now that we have to have that included as part of the tenancy. It's such a safeguard for not just the landlord but the tenant as well. I think it helps everybody because your deposit, as we know, and I'll talk about in a second, is in the government deposit scheme. So in order to obviously be fair about how we are either divvying that up or returning it to the tenant or returning it to the landlord or wherever it needs to go, there has to be evidence to help you do that. And if you don't, and your property has damage that you want to claim on, you don't really have a lot of evidence to back you up to make that claim, and it will go back to the tenant. Now, the tenant's deposit is the tenant's money for the duration of the tenancy, and it's held in that deposit scheme. And you could only claim against that successfully with the right evidence. And to us, that seems very straightforward, but we do it day in, day out. To landlords that possibly don't deal with the end and exit of tenancies quite a lot, or are new landlord or investors, this might be all completely new to them. So sometimes it needs to be explained. And you need to be patient with people trying to explain to them why this is required. I've seen a lot of people over the years go to agents and they're very I don't have time to explain this to you type thing. But you really need to appreciate people don't know what you know, and you only know what you know. And if you're new to this, then you won't know that. That's what your agent's there for, to help you and explain it to you. Protecting your tenant's deposit and the government approved scheme is necessary. You need to do that within 30 days. Provide your tenant with the details of the provider. Now, I know we use Safe Deposit Scotland, and they also touch base with the tenant and send them all the details and whatever as well, which is really good. And also that procedure that is required when recovering the deposit. If the deposit is in dispute at the end for whatever reason, you need to be quite clear with the tenant and the landlord. This is the process that's going to be followed. But I'm speaking from a letting agent's point of view. If you're a self-managing landlord, you'll need to make it clear to the tenant, I've conducted the exit inspection. Ideally, they should be there. this is what I found, it doesn't match up to the inventory, we're going to claim on the deposit, it'll come through the deposit scheme, they will present it to you, and you could either accept or you can then question that or query it, and it will go into adjudication. And each party could submit further evidence, and then an independent adjudicator for the deposit scheme will make the decision about how it's divided up and the monetary values in that. And that is the fairest way to do it with the third party involved. And 9 times out of 10, that runs smoothly.
And it's also a very lengthy process as well. So making sure like landlords and tenants know that this is going to take time as well if it does go through that adjudication process, especially.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a few, if you do, I mean, I don't do exit inspections myself personally anymore, but in my years of doing them, do you know, if tenants will be like, okay, that this happened, that's fine, I accept, like, and we put that through, they accept, the landlord's happy, the money, and it can be done fairly quickly if everybody's in agreement, whether there's a claim or whether there's not. If everybody's on the same page and everybody's in agreement, so it's quite good to have that right communication and people aware of what's expected of them and what's going to happen in the procedure. If everybody's on board and everybody's on the same page, it can be fairly quick, but it's when people don't agree and then it goes into adjudication, which is quite, and everybody's right to do that if they want to. It can be a lengthy process in some instances. So, but then, as I say, complying with all the regulations around letting, and now that includes, you touched on energy performance there, Kerin, your energy performance certificate, your gas safety certificate, which is right up there and always been one of the most important ones for me. Electrical safety, the EICR inspections and the certificates and things, this all needs to be done. Smoke alarms need to be up to code and in date as well. I've seen some that we've went into properties sometimes that we've taken over that have got smoke alarms, and the landlord possibly thinks, okay, they're fine, but no, they've been up for longer than 10 years and they're out of date now, so they need to be updated. Carbon monoxide detector is a really important one as well. And, you know, having them all in the right place, I think, is important. We spoke about this just recently, about where to actually position a carbon monoxide detector. And a lot of times, where will we see them, Kerin?
Oh, they're tucked away in cupboards where they shouldn't be, or just they're not even in the vicinity of the boiler, or it's the tenants maybe taking the batteries out. So that's also the importance of doing your inspections, is making sure that your property is kept, your CO detector is where it should be, and your smoke alarms are all interlinked as well. So obviously you can have them up, but they all need to be speaking to each other. So make sure they're all interlinked is key as well.
And that doesn't mean hardwired now, Kerin. It's remotely connected with the long life lithium batteries. Yeah. But yeah,
they've come a long way since the initial EICRs were done. So thankfully we don't have to have trunking all over our houses anymore. They do just have to be remotely, but obviously they do still have to be interlinked with each other.
Yeah. Well, you and I both were
working the rollout of them and the renewal 5 years later.
That was a challenge, we'll call it, but we got there. To get every single property compliant when that new legislation rolled out. Yeah, definitely. But I was just going to go back to the carbon monoxide detectors, and they're always in the cupboard beside the boiler, and they shouldn't be. They should be outside it. Anyway, so any questions about smoke alarms and things, speak to a contractor or speak to a letting agent, and they will be able to advise you properly. And then you mentioned about doing checks and things. You're carrying out mandatory checks to ensure that your tenant isn't on the UK sanctions list. That's something that you need to do. That's and a lot of people won't be aware of that. Our referencing process includes that, Kerin. So that's something that's always done. And for rental homes in England, conducting the right to rent checks for any non-UK citizens. So yeah, if you're south of the border and you have people outside the UK, you need to do the right to rent check, and that's very important. And then also knowing your obligations regarding trading standards for information and such as promotional listings and things, and ensure that your property stays fit for habitation throughout the entirety of the tenancy. And that's obviously wind and watertight and in line with the Repairing Standard Act here in Scotland. And you know, a thorough understanding of your legal obligations and safeguards your investment, really. Your investment, it safeguards you from a lot of stress. It safeguards your tenant while they are in the tenancy, and it really helps you avoid having some severe penalties which are attached to not adhering to these. But also, you know, it sets the stage for a really smooth and successful investment and rental experience. And
That's
really,
ultimately what everybody wants.
yeah, I was just going to say, really, you can't argue with that. That's what everybody wants. Happy landlord, happy tenant, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So what about tenants then? Attracting the right tenants and managing tenants, Kerin. Talk us through that.
Yes, so being a magnet for the right tenant and managing them successfully involves effective advertisement, thorough referencing, and establishing clear ways to communicate, which is obviously all things that we deal with on a daily basis. But not a lot of landlords do. I mean, even when it comes to advertisement, you can see landlords that have done it themselves, and or even, to be fair, the odd agent, and it's like their thumbs in the side of the lens in the shot, or it's just, oh, you can see them in the mirror. It's just not everybody's quite where they ideally should be, but each to their own. So having check with local agents for effectiveness from quality of their photos and descriptions, to which online property portals they use for general maximum exposure. So obviously the portals is quite a key one as well. You can have an agent that has a great listing, but if they're not advertising on the right websites, is your property getting that right visibility that it ideally needs? Your two main ones up here are Zoopla and Rightmove. Some agents just advertise on one of them. Obviously, we advertise on both, as well as an array of other portals as well. But I'd say they're your two main ones that you ideally want an agent to at least be on the two of them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have our own website, which we spent a lot of time and things developing, so and it is quite interactive and things as well. But yeah, you're right. Rightmove, Zoopla, Prime Location, S1 Homes, all these other ones that feed off as well.
Yeah. And this is quite a key point that we do as well, which is screen tenants before they view to ensure they're a good fit for the property and they can move at a time that fits your time scale. Obviously, a question we ask is how long are you looking to rent for? Obviously, in Scotland, there are no fixed terms anymore. It is on effectively a month-to-month basis. So you could have a tenant that moves in and gives 28 days notice and be out within a month, basically. So finding how long somebody is looking to rent for as well is an important one. But again, their move-in date is quite a crucial thing to ask, because you can get somebody that's maybe, especially I would say at this time of the year, where you've got a lot of people moving, like academically wise, they're maybe looking to start in September or at the end of August. And it's like, is that going to work for the timescale if you've got a property that's ready to go now? Or is that landlord going to be happy waiting all that length of time? Or it's even explaining to them that what the expectation is around that time scale and how long their deposit will hold the property for them.
Yeah, we get quite a lot of that about this time of year, especially because we've got the influx of students coming to, I mean, St Andrews predominantly, but there's other areas of Fife that the students are coming into, and we've got property on the market, but like we're ready to go now. So like they're looking for a move-in date, possibly like, you know, August, September time. So it might not.
Checking what their time scale is obviously quite important. But implementing a thorough referencing process that includes credit checks, employment verification, past landlord references if that is an option, and bank statements to minimise the risk of arrears or damage. And it's known to look for those red flags as well. Obviously, when you're doing viewings with people, ask them questions, see if that's then what's going to match up on paper as well. You can tell the ones that fib their way through the viewing and then you come around to the referencing and things don't match up. So it's, doing your due diligence there.
You need to, because I mean, transparency is the best way forward with anything, really, I think. But especially with this, and it's just like a job interview in much ways, in essence, really. So you need to be really upfront and transparent. And the thing is, not everyone's perfect and has a perfect credit score and a perfect financial history. That's expected. Not everyone is perfect, but if somebody's maybe had an issue with something in the past financially or whatever, if they're really upfront about it and explain why and how they've resolved it or how they're working on resolving it, and they still have a good income, they've still got good references and things, it doesn't exclude them. But as soon as they don't disclose something like that and aren't truthful and transparent about their situation, it's a big red flag.
Yeah. That's the thing.
Honesty is the best policy, I think.
It certainly is. So obviously, like you say, we understand not everybody's perfect. Everybody's got history, regardless of what it is. So just being upfront with somebody about it is a lot easier than trying to white lie or make up
demonstrates a
things.
lot of their character and puts them in good stead, I think, with me anyway, if I was doing an interview or trying to qualify somebody for a tenant.
It is, and that's the thing. It is effectively an interview. I mean, people are turning up for a quick viewing, and as an agent, you've got within that limited time scale to try and get a feel for what they're like as a person, and if you think they're going to be a suitable tenant, because obviously we have to match up that in-person aspect as well as on paper.
Yeah.
And it is, I don't think some people realise when they come along for a viewing, they are effectively getting interviewed, because we do have to find that right person for the property.
Yeah, definitely.
But during the tenancy, make regular inspections to ensure your property is being well cared for, and keep your tenants informed about the status of any maintenance issues or repairs. We've seen this, obviously, communication is key when it comes to any maintenance repairs, because if your tenant could have reported an issue, you could have it in hand, you could have a contractor due to attend, but if you've not told them that, they don't know that you're dealing with it. So it can just cause a lot of friction there. So just keeping them up to date, whether it's just sending a wee text, giving them that phone call, just keeping them updated on the progress of things like that, it makes the world of difference, and they know you're actively trying to resolve it. And likewise as well, if you are looking to then do an inspection, you've built up that better relationship with the tenant, so they are more likely to firstly let you in and be looking after the property.
Yeah, definitely.
Ultimately, strong marketing, careful tenant selections, and proactive management are the foundation of stable tenancies, helping you to minimise void periods and build up a positive experience for everyone.
Yeah, and yeah, that attracting and looking after the tenants and things, we talk about it like it's second nature, and that's because we do it day in, day out. And if you're self-managed, it might not come to you as second nature. So, and by all means, if you want to self-manage, then that's fine. But I think even in the first instance, to use an agent, because they've got that skill of the selection process, and it's something that takes a long time to get right, to think of all those red flags and the things to pick up on that normally people wouldn't. And then obviously they've got the ability to do proper background and referencing checks through the referencing companies that you use and things as well. I think even just to get an agent to set it up properly for you with the right person, it would make it all that easier as well. But again, if you're building a big portfolio, you're going to have a really full-time job managing tenancies throughout the whole tenancy if you've got numerous properties. So, an agent, I think in time, I think agents are going to become a lot more of the norm, because there's so much legislation and there's so much red tape and all these things that can get your fingers burnt in terms of not adhering to the legislation. It might become a lot more of the norm to use a letting agent. But that's not me just saying that because I'm a letting agent and being quite biased, but it's just, I think it's the best way forward. But that's your decision to make, the viewer.
Yeah, we see everything that goes into it, and obviously we know how time consuming and how up to date you have to be with everything. So yeah, I don't know how self-managed landlords do it, to be honest. Even for their tax returns, getting their statements through, it's so much easier when you're getting it from an accountant that's breaking it down, and then you can just pass it on to your accountant to sort things out for yourself there. But I mean, gone are the days where you keep receipts in shoe boxes and hand them over.
Yeah, there's some landlords, and they've done it for years, and then I sit in front of them, and you've probably had it yourself, Kerin, and you're like, right, okay, well, you'll get your statement every month, and it shows all your expenditure, it shows your rent coming in, it shows your management fee to your agent coming off, and fees to management agents are all tax deductible, your initial fees, your management fee. It has it all there on the monthly statement, what's happened in that month, if there's costs of repairs and all the rest of it, and you'll get one of them each month, and all you do is submit them. And that is declaring your additional income, your tax deductible expenses, all your repairs, everything like that, all in one place. You don't need separate receipts and this, and it could be quite stressful in its own, especially if you do your own self-assessment. Which I think if you've got multiple properties in an investment portfolio, you really use an accountant. But that's another story. If you decide to do your own, then that's fine.
Yeah, and obviously there's different ways for optimizing your business. So you want to run us through them, Richard?
Yeah, and we're calling it a business because it is, and like your buy to let, if you've got a buy to let portfolio It is very much a business. And like I say, Kerin, you've spoke about do you know, if we go beyond the day-to-day running of just like your rental property, optimizing the actual business itself will keep things, you know, running smoothly, and you can avoid some of those really common mistakes. And ultimately, it's all about acting like a professional. So you need to really be sure that you're doing things right. And firstly, you know, keep up to date with the landlord tax rules, what your claimable expenses are, what your charges on your the changes on your mortgage rate, interest relief are, your capital gains tax. Do you know, if you were to sell the property, what capital gains taxes are you going to have to pay? And keep your expenditure and things all in one place. Like I say, if you've got a managing agent, these statements. Otherwise, you're going to have to keep a hold of all those receipts and invoices and things. And the point I'm trying to make is keep an accurate record of all your expenditure and your costs and your outgoings and things. But like I say, claimable expenses and things, your management fees, your interest rate relief, and then capital gains tax. This is one thing that you've got tax benefits from having your limited company set up, especially if you're having a buy-to-let portfolio of several properties. And I've seen landlords who have been buying property on their own name, and there was one I always remember, I think he'd got to about 5, and he wanted to change them from his own name into his limited company, and the capital gains tax bill was quite a lot, and he just couldn't do it. So I mean, there's another landlord who actually I think moved 6 across from his own name, and he done it. He did pay for it, but he's like, in the long run, it was going to benefit him. But yeah, you have to be careful of that, because technically you are selling them. Although you're selling them to your limited company, which you will be the director of, you're still selling them, so you're going to have that capital gains tax. So think about that. If you want to obviously delve more into capital gains and things, speak to the right people, have a right chat with your financial advisor and things as well, and they should be able to give you the right information on capital gains tax. But it's something you really need to think about. Regularly review your rental income and expenses, and stay mindful of these upgrades and improvements that you will need to do, but will genuinely add value to keep your property performing over time. If you're in for the long-term investment, you will need to look at things like, okay, it's time for the bathroom to get done. Especially, say you've got we'll take a family home, and you've got a rental property that's a family home. Over a certain amount of years, things will obviously need updated due to wear and tear, and not at the expense of anybody else but you, the landlord. And that includes big things like the kitchen and the bathroom, and depending on the age of your property, possibly the roof. And these are all things that you need to factor in, but also don't look at them as a negative and a costly thing, because they will enhance the value and the appeal of your property if you do need to resell, or if you possibly do need to remortgage and release some equity to reinvest. So always look at the opportunities and the optimistic side of things, instead of, I'm having to spend more money on my rental property. Schedule all those reminders in your diary, and do a few weeks before the actual expiry date of things like your gas safety certificate. Don't set the date it expires to remind you, because then that time you're trying to rearrange it, it's out of date. Get at least 2 weeks. I would say a month, possibly even 2 months. But anyway.
Yeah, we always try and look at it that month prior, so you've got time to obviously make arrangements, get contractors, speak to the tenant, get access. So, ideally a month before, especially for your gas and your electrics. They're both, you're going to have to rely on contractors' availability. And if you are a self-managed landlord, do you have reliable contractors that can go and do that for you?
Yeah. Gas and fire safety are like smoke alarms. They are all right up there with the most important. Don't leave them to the day it's due.
Yes.
Yeah. And then also protecting yourself as a landlord with a really comprehensive landlord insurance policy. That could include rent protection. It should include contents and public liability insurance, and then possibly even emergency cover in there. You might want to have, I don't know, you could possibly have your boiler included in that. You could possibly have your drainage and plumbing and things all included in that. But I think that the basics are to have your contents and public liability and things in there. And you could add on rent protection and other emergency covers. But make sure you've got a good insurance policy there, and always read the small print of your policy and what you're actually covered for, and in what events you can actually claim. Because I've seen experienced a lot of landlords having their policies over the years, something coming up, and they go to claim, and there's always a little loophole that sometimes doesn't enable them to claim, and then they're left to pay for it out of their own pocket. So yeah, I mean, make sure you've got a good insurance provider, and your policy is quite good. Tradespeople as well, and contractors. Now, we have spent a lot of years building up our contractors list. We have a lot of really good contractors, tradespeople, but get recommendations for really reliable tradespeople in your local area that people have actually used. You see a lot on social media, like, oh, use these people, and these people are flying around these recommendations, they've never used them. I would recommend our contractors and use our contractors confidently, because I've used them for years and I know what their work's like, I know what their costing's like, I know what their timekeeping's like, I know what the response times are like. They will go out on public holidays and things when I need them to. Yeah, I mean, ideally not, but I have had to do it in the past. But
that's the thing; these things happen at the worst times, so you always have to be prepared.
Yeah, I think it was It was Boxing Day, the last one I had. I had to get my electrician out to the hardwired smoke alarms in a bungalow for an elderly couple, and anyway, but my electrician went, no problem. So yeah, and these tradespeople do include electricians and plumbers, gas engineers. Even just that odd job handyman that will do a wide range of things. They can be really invaluable to you, especially when you've got day-to-day things happening with multiple properties, and they could turn their hand to, whether it's a joinery thing or just a general, tightening a bolt on a pipe that's maybe leaking and things where you can't get your plumber out. Just odd jobs, handymen that are quite invaluable to you. If you've got a good relationship with them, then you've got somebody that's really worth having on your books. And I think as a bit of a tip, work with your managing agent at the start, and then you could really share that legal risk. If you work together with your agent and make sure that you are both like on the same page, like this needs done, and you could share that risk and kind of eliminate any possible times where you could probably get your fingers burnt and then end up having to pay a fine, or possibly even worse. And it's not just for the landlord that this is a problem. You've got a tenant in a property, you want to make sure it's legally compliant and things as well. And then, as a team, between yourself, your agent, your contractors and things, you could build up a really good team, and that way you could share knowledge and really have confidence in each other, and you have confidence that your property's been looked after, the tenancy is safe, and that you're not going to be held liable for anything. And I think that's a really invaluable thing. If you've got that peace of mind, and a really good agent with a really good group of contractors and things will be able to provide you that.
Yeah, having the right people on your team is key when you're going through this, and speaking to the right people, getting the right advice is all very important, because it is one of your biggest investments that you're going to be starting that journey on.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we've covered quite a lot of the fundamental things. I mean, and the main things to think about, the finance and the finding the right property in the right area, that really good investment, making sure you're legally compliant, attracting the right tenant for your property, and how to manage the tenants throughout, and finding the right agent and people to manage the tenant. And then really looking at these pitfalls and actually optimizing your buy-to-let portfolio as an actual profitable and successful business. And that a lot of the time boils down to, as well, as happy tenants. Always have to get happy tenants, happy landlord. It's such a symbiotic thing. It really is. But yeah, if you're ready to start thriving with your buy-to-let business, and if that's, as I said, if you're a first-time landlord, or you're simply looking to really enhance and build your portfolio, these are all the things you need to think about step by step. And if you want to reach out to me directly or even Kerin and cover anything in a wee bit more detail that we spoke about this morning, you can do that. jump in the comments. We're live this morning and I can see questions and I will answer them all, but we do rerun these shows. So if it's a rerun, still jump in the comments, we'll come back. But you could always reach out to us direct. My email is attached to the blog of what we've been speaking about today on this post. It's richard.cook@fiveproperties.co.uk, and you are very welcome to reach out to me direct. Any final thoughts, Kerin, before we wrap up this morning?
I think we covered a lot of good points there, but if there are any questions, we're here to help.
Yeah, definitely. Right, guys, that was great. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining me, Kerin. Always a pleasure. And we'll catch you next time.
See you later.
Thanks. Bye.